That's what we call a sitting ovation, I think.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Welcome, everybody, this morning. What a wonderful turnout. I'm so thrilled to be talking to, not interviewing, talking to two actually great friends of mine, Simon Williams and Lucy Fleming, who obviously incredibly well-known and talented and in everybody's hearts from their various television, stage, radio performances, including The Archers, which I'm sure everybody adores, Upstairs, Downstairs, Survivors, numerous plays, the most wonderful thing which the two of them are doing at the moment, which are you're reading wartime letters from your mother, Celia Johnson, and
from my parents' wartime letters. It's a show called Posting Letters to the Moon.
We've done it here.
Yeah, we did it here about 3 years ago.
A huge acclaim.
And it's wartime letters between Celia Johnson and Peter Fleming, who was working in deception in India. And it's very good.
Now we're working in deception here in the Hurlingham Club.
Exactly. Now, first question is, what's it like working together?
Lucy, you go first.
It has its pros and cons. We do work together quite a lot, not by design, by accident, really. And it's very nice. You're leading the same kind of hours, whereas if one of you's in a play and the other isn't, it's quite tedious having to wait up for them at night. You've got somebody to learn your lines with, which is always a nightmare.
The worst part about it is on the way home. And Lucy will say there'll be a pause in the conversation and she'll say, you know that bit where... And I say, yes.
Not true.
Do you think you really need to say it like that? There was a terrible moment, we did a terrible thriller together and the review came out and it said, la, 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 but someone should tell Simon Williams to take a leaf out of his wife's book. She could teach him a thing or two about acting.
Oh, that's vicious.
That was quite a silent drive home that night.
It was a very silent night altogether.
Now, I wanted to ask you both as well. Both of you are sired by theatrical. Your parents were also in the theatre, Simon. And did you ever contemplate any other career, either of you?
I didn't. You did.
What was it? I'm intrigued.
I've always wanted to be a beach bum. I'd love to be a kind of vagabond in my old age. As a young man, I don't know, I just... I think maybe it was just I sort of fell in love with the theatre when I first was taken backstage and saw an empty auditorium and watched my father making up the actor Hugh Williams. And I just thought the buildings were fabulous and I thought the people were sweet and kind and they quite often gave me half a crown. And I think I loved it sort of spontaneously, but I've grown to love it very, very deeply, the way you do maybe after an infatuation. And I love the theatre. I couldn't think of any other job I'd rather do.
Your father wanted you to be a hotel manager, didn't he?
Yes, I was going to be a hotelier. And I would have been a probably much better hotelier than actor, really.
Well,
Nobody said anything, really. Awful.
I was looking at you kind of thinking Basil Fawlty you were going to say, but no.
Well, that's lovely. That's the way it's going to go.
It's not going to go well. But I guess when you both started, what's really changed in the profession is the sort of exposure through social media and media is so different nowadays and so much more difficult, I would imagine, for young actors because there's the mystery, the mystique has changed hugely because everybody is, caught on camera, kind of asked to expose their innermost feelings. And I think that it's actually very sad because when you didn't have that, and I think it's probably galloped along in the last 10 years, wouldn't you say?
Well, I think the whole process of being even a little bit famous is one of the real downsides of being an actor, because once people sort of know, they think you know you, and they don't know you at all. And so I always play bastards and capitalists and unpleasant people. So I don't have to do very much to improve my image in people.
He's lying.
I remember when Upstairs, Downstairs first was on air, and I was outside with a child on my hip in my dressing gown paying the milkman, and two ladies were walking by, and one of them said to the other, "Oh, look, he takes milk." I thought, oh, yes, I suppose so, you know. It's a weird old business.
I think what's different, when we started, there were repertory theatres where you could go and learn your craft and watch people and learn just by doing everything you possibly could in the theatre, from painting the scenery to getting props and taking, you know, lines at rehearsal. And that taught you so much about the theatre. And I don't think they really exist to any extent anymore. And fame nowadays is so instant for the young people if they get lucky with television. I think there's a lot of luck involved, and good luck to them.
Well, young actors, I think, are greatly helped today by the wonderful technology at their disposal. They don't have to wear makeup because the lighting's so good. They don't have to project their voice because everybody in every West End show is mic'd. The camera can move so well, they don't have to do any of the discipline things we had to do, like hit your marks, or, you know, it needs much less technical skill than it used to because the technology is so good.
And both of you, I presume, did start in rep. Yes?
The honeymoon for me was weekly rep, doing a play a week. It doesn't exist anymore. You didn't do it, did you?
Was it fantastic fun? It must have
wonderful.
been
You start
hard
rehearsing.
work,
You start rehearsing a play on Tuesday morning. You open the following Monday, and then you start again another play, rehearsing on the Tuesday. It was very, very approximate and very scary. It was acting by the seat of your pants. It was wonderful. The happiest days of my life.
It was great. I started at Farnham Rep, which is a little theatre called the Castle Theatre, tiny. And on the first day, they said, "Could you go and make the tea?" And I had no idea how to make tea.
She still hasn't.
Luckily, somebody was there to help me.
I was told to go and get the iron in at the interval on my first day, which, of course, they meant the Iron Curtain. But after a quarter of an hour, the stage manager came and found me putting an ironing board in the middle of the stage.
Fabulous. And let me ask
it was
you,
a learning curve.
how much did you earn when you were in rep, when you started?
I was paid £1 a week. I was a student. And I think I'd have paid £10 to be there.
I was on £1 a week as well. And then they paid me out of petty cash. And I just put it on the bar and buy a round of drinks. And they'd say, that'll be 23 shillings. So I had to put my whole salary and another 3 shillings on top of it. But
The thing that must be amazing, because both of you work all the time, is that it must do fantastic things for one's brain to keep learning lines. Would you agree? Keeps one very active and your brain ticking over.
It gets more alarming, and I remember my mother saying this about line learning and the fear of forgetting your lines as you get older. The wonderful thing about a job like the Archers is you don't have to learn it because you read it.
Yes, of course, absolutely. But do you find you kind of like that challenge?
I'm a great fan of Giles Brandreth, who recommended a few years ago that we all start learning a poem a week or a poem a day. And through the pandemic and onwards, I've been learning some old chestnuts, and it's quite good. You take a page of a poem and take it for a walk and learn one line and then repeat that and then add to it and add to it. And by the end of 6 months, you'll find you've got 10 or 15 poems that you have in your repertoire. And I think that, and then standing on one foot and balancing with your eyes closed while the kettle boils, that helps.
But your husband, Johnny Standing, that lovely actor, he's getting on a bit now, but he can learn lines really easily, can't he?
Well,
You could tell
no,
the truth here.
I wouldn't say easily, but he does. And during the pandemic, he decided to learn Shakespeare's longest sonnet, right, in Hamlet. And he learnt it, and it took him quite a long time. And Eddie Izzard is our neighbour where we live. And the other night, Eddie Izzard knocked on the door in a very attractive kind of Broadway Anglais skirt and a handbag and a shirt, and came over to tell Johnny that he was doing a one-man or one-woman show of Hamlet where he was playing all the parts. Oh. And the two of them had a kind of Shakespeare competition where they both did the same speech at the same time, and I luckily managed to film it. I managed to, like Bake Off. I managed to film it for posterity. It's the most wonderful thing.
Oh, I think we'd like to see that.
Yeah, it's very good with Eddie in his skirt and Johnny in his kind of.
What was Johnny being allowed to play? Was he playing Gertrude? Or...
No, it's very funny. I've got it on record. You must have the most wonderful anecdotes, funny stories. And I wondered if you'd share them with the audience, theatrical, funny stories of things going wrong.
It is the single most terrifying thing in the world, opening in a play, because the audience, rather like the audience that used to go and see bullfights, they kind of want to see the matador gore. They want to see the actor cock up, basically. And I think the worst thing you have to do on a first night is pour tea or drinks, because your hands simply... cannot get hold of the decanter anywhere near the glass.
I was doing an Agatha Christie play at Windsor, that lovely theatre, and we'd had about a week's rehearsal, which is not really enough. And they said, right, you're opening on Tuesday, on you go. And so we managed to get through the first act all right, and we thought, well, it's going quite well. And then at the end of the first act, somebody gets killed, and is obviously left on the stage while everybody goes off. We come back to do the second act, and the stage manager doesn't check the stage, and when we come back, there's no body there. So
the actor playing the corpse had popped out for a quick pint. So up went the curtain.
Up went the curtain. We stood there doing our dialogue as if he was there. And then slowly the French windows opened and he rolled down onto where...
You have to tell them what your next line was.
My next line was, "This looks very fishy." We then had to carry him off stage, so it was pointless, really.
Lucy and I did a terrible thriller together, in which involved me locking her into my house and trying to convince her that we'd known each other for years and years. It was a film called Chase a Crooked Shadow. Anyway, I locked her in. I said, I'm going to play you a song. And I locked the door and tossed the keys supposedly on top of the piano. But on the matinee, I put them in my pocket by mistake. And I started playing the piano, which, of course, was recorded. And I was playing, "You surely remember this song," and playing away like this. And she said, "I want to get out of here." And I said, "All right, then, there are the keys, take them." And I looked, and the keys were not on top of the piano. So I went, "Oh, like this." And miraculously, the piano went on playing. But it shows what a fine method actor I am, because I looked at the piano and thought, this is a miracle, because I'm a pianist. I can't play at all. And anyway, I gave her the keys. And she said, "Why don't you play that song again? Actually keeping your fingers on the keyboard." That was another frosty journey home.
Ad-libbing.
Just brought the house down.
Yeah, I bet it did. That is a wonderful story. I haven't heard that story of yours before.
No. It was with Joe Ross.
Was it?
Yeah.
How fab. Joe must have been in absolute hysterics.
Getting the giggles is one of the really main hazards of the game, because once you've done a play for a certain amount of time, you kind of can do it a little bit on automatic, the way you don't have to think about changing gear in a car, and you can find yourself sorting out the shopping list for tomorrow and wondering whether the babysitter's arrived and all that. And suddenly you can be brought up short and you think you don't know where we are. And this happened in the final act of a farce. And there were 6 or 7 actors on stage, and suddenly they came to a grinding halt. And there was a terrible silence. And all the actors looked at one another like this, and and the prompt came from the corner, and they all looked at one another again, and the prompt came again, and they looked at one another again, and the leading lady stepped forward and said, "We all know what the line is, dear, but which one of us says it?"
Are there still a lot of prompts? Some people. I was speaking to an actor the other day who said they've done away with.
They've done away with prompts now. They say to you before the dress rehearsal, if you forget your lines, you dig yourself out of the hole. So some sweet actor will say, "Weren't you going to say, 'How are you?'" You go, "Yes, how are you?"
If you work at Chichester or somewhere where the play is controlled from, if this is the stage, from way at the back, there's no way of getting a prompt. So sometimes, if you're a bit worried, you get somebody sitting in what they call the vomitoriums, where you come on from with a script, but it's a bit basic.
That must be unbelievably terrifying. I do apologise because we all kind of have our backs towards you or sides towards you. It's a very difficult stage to manage.
I'm all right here, right back in the middle. Thank you. I'm fine. Stage centre.
Now, I know everybody would love to hear some stories from Upstairs, Downstairs, which you can still get on your television, to my great joy, on UK, whatever, endless television channels.
There's so many of the cast now gone ahead. It was 50 years ago.
Which is unbelievable.
It was rather like Downton Abbey, only a bit
Better.
more like Crossroads, really.
Yeah, better, Lucy. I agree.
The sets wobbled a bit. But Noel Coward described the television in those days as kind of weekly rep in an iron lung, because you rehearsed like a play for 10 days and then you went in the studios and you did it pretty much as live. So if you had a quick change of costume, then you had a quick change. You didn't break the film and break the tape. And it was quite terrifying. It was a cross between, and you had a thought this is going to be seen by sort of 17 to 18 million people. And but the actors in early live television developed this wonderful trick. They knew that they couldn't get a prompt. So when they couldn't remember their lines, they simply moving their lips like that without saying anything, because they knew that all over the country, people would jump up and thrash the top of the television.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
How long did it take to film each episode?
Each episode took sort of 10 days. We'd rehearse for 6 or 7 days, then we'd spend 2 days in the studio getting into wing collars. People ask how you find characters, but you know, the kind of the script gives you the character, but then the costume. I mean, once you've got into a wing collar that holds your neck up like that and cuts into you every time you move your head, and you've got to stick a moustache on to keep your stiff upper lip in place, you sort of have my character. I didn't have to do much inside those two things. I just stood there and was horrid.
Was it a very happy experience?
It was very happy. I loved working with Pauline Collins, who played the maid. And eventually when we eloped together, I remember I had to scoop her up. The odd thing about Upstairs, Downstairs, there were no actual stairs. It was all shot on the studio floor. So there'd be stairs, a few steps going up. We'd say, "Oh, we're going upstairs." We'd trot up the stairs, and they'd briefly break, and we'd pretend to arrive upstairs, all on one level. But anyway, the eloping scene with Pauline involved me picking her up and carrying her off. We were going to run away and have a life together. And just as I was holding her in my arms, ready to go with the scene, she said, "Oh, I didn't tell you, I'm 4 months pregnant." And I went, "Oh," like this, very timorously up the stairs without any kind of great romance in it.
Have you both found, as you've got slightly older, although you both look ridiculously young, have you found that your interests and what you like doing has changed?
Do you mean in general or
In general,
acting?
not in acting, just in general everyday life.
I think they've refined, probably. I've never liked parties. That hasn't changed.
Or cooking.
I don't mind cooking. I just find it rather boring.
I used to find the happiest thing was my agent ringing, and now I find the happiest things the house martins coming about the end of April.
And what about travelling? Are you more adventurous as you've got a little bit more time on your hands, or are you?
Well, apart from airports, I quite enjoy travelling, but airports now are such a nightmare.
He hates saying goodbye to the dog.
Yeah.
The dog looks at the suitcase and just goes into a decline.
I think nature, I think as one becomes older, one becomes more aware of nature. I think, do you not agree?
I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
I used to not care about the seasons. I just put on a jersey if it was cold and my wellies if it was wet. But now I really care about every single day when the trees change or the flowers bud or whatever.
Or the sun coming out, let's face
Yes.
it. I mean, this is just an epic kind of breakthrough today. Yeah. What about you, Lucy?
I love we live in a country and we live in a very beautiful place, and May is my favourite month, when the pale green of the beech trees contrasts with the purple of the bluebells, a bit like Wimbledon really. But I just love it. I love watching them coming out, the trees. They've all come out at different times of the year this year because it's been such an odd spring.
The walnut trees always last, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yes.
And do you love doing things? I mean, obviously you act together and you live together and you've been married for very many years. Do you have separate interests or do you have the same interests?
I have all Lucy's interests.
And I have
few of
all
my
Simon's.
Because you do a lot of writing, which is quite a solitary thing.
The strange thing about writing after you've acted is actually feeling in control of the characters. You know, when you're especially in a serial or something, you have to do what you're told. The first thing we do when we get the Archer script is to look at the last page and see if we've been killed.
Yeah.
Because there goes the mortgage.
Can't you sometimes come back from the dead, though, in the Archers, or not?
It hasn't been known. I mean, poor Pargeter fell off the roof of the church, if you remember.
Yeah.
The longest death cry ever. And I don't think he'll be coming back.
No, he won't be coming back.
No, so I was going to be killed off in Upstairs, Downstairs, but we got an award in America, and they said we're going to do another series. So I was missing, presumed dead, and then miraculously I was found alive. Yeah. Came back.
That's the wonder of cinema or television, is that it can go any which way, especially if one's a popular character. They kind of think we'll kill him. No, but he hasn't actually died. It's just he's going to come back.
Just looks like death.
Yeah.
I did say that because my agent has said it's a very good thing to die in a series because everyone knows you're then available for other work. So I said, well, could I still have a death? And they said, yes, we've arranged a death for you in the final episodes.
So you like controlling, you like writing because you can be in control of the plot, of the characters.
Yes. Because if you like two characters, you can put them in bed together. If you don't like them, you can kill one off. I like that speed of power.
The power.
And I like playing about with, well, like you do. You're a writer. You work words beautifully.
Well, thank you. But
you should write a play. Johnny and I.
The two of you, yes.
Johnny and I could play old codgers fighting over Lucy.
Yes. Be wonderful, actually. But do you like the solitude of writing? Because you're such a gregarious man.
I am a gregarious man.
Do you have to slope away and shut yourself away? Am I not mad? Did you not have somewhere to write called writer's block?
I do. I have a little room called writer's block on the door. But I'm a gregarious creature. So being alone is quite difficult for me. In an ideal world, I would live in sort of an interesting part of Soho or Chelsea, and I would spend my working day writing in the corner of a busy cafe. I'd have cappuccinos coming every 20 minutes, and I'd just be there with my word processor watching the world go by.
Well, I would imagine that in the kind of 60s, 50s, theatre world was much smaller and everybody knew one another and gathered in the same places. Am I right? I have this romanticised view of it, but I think it's quite an accurate view of it.
It was so different, wasn't it?
The thing is, when you've been acting for, I think I've been acting nearly 60 years come October,
Could everyone gasp?
No.
Standing ovation, please. and but you say she's lying. Yes.
You make friends on jobs from years back, and then you make new friends, and some of them stick and some of them don't. But it's not because you don't like them or want to see them. It's just paths go in different ways, you know.
It was so different then. I mean, on the first day's rehearsal, the juveniles would have to call the leading man sir, and you would have to wear at least a suit or a blazer and tie. When my my father left RADA. He and Wilfred Hyde-White, his great friend, they said, there's something amazing going on in the West End. You have to go and see this. And they all went down to see this phenomenal new breakthrough in modern acting. And it was simply that Gerald du Maurier, the star of the time, put his hands in his pockets for a scene. And all the drama students at RADA went, wow, what is the world coming to? And my father, in his first play in the West End, was told by the leading lady, oh, don't ever touch a woman above the elbow on stage, darling, it's too sexy.
Oh my God,
You
like
think
in
what we've
Hollywood,
seen now.
where you had to keep one leg on the floor if you were doing a bedroom scene, you know.
It's really tricky, that, even in life, isn't it?
No, but everybody must have gathered in similar places, rather like when the Ivy restaurant, everybody would be there.
You know the story of the Ivy and Noel Coward.
No, go on.
During the war, Noel Coward said any soldier, any acting soldier who comes into the Ivy, don't give them a bill, I'll pay it next time. So actors of his generation just loved Noel, as everybody did, because they could go to the Ivy with their girlfriends in uniform and the bill would just be disappeared. Thanks
God,
to his
fantastic.
generosity. Probably your dad too. Yeah.
Did you meet Noel Coward?
Oh yes, I certainly met him. He was a delightful man.
Simon and I met doing Hay Fever with my mother, and it was a production that had been on at the National, which Noel had directed. This was a separate production, but very similar, and he came to a run-through at the Duke of York's, I think, and we were nervous standing about, and he came up on stage afterwards, and we were hovering on every word he might say, and he said, I'd forgotten what an awfully good play it was.
How fabulous. That's very Noel Coward. It's almost, yes.
What he was actually saying in his coded kind of way was, even you lot can't ruin it.
It is a fabulous play, though. I mean, and it really does stand the
Yes.
test of time.
Lucy and I had a review that said, Simon Williams and Lucy Fleming are adequately wholesome. Jolly proud of that.
My mother, Celia Johnson, loved Noel. She obviously worked with him a lot in films and on the stage, and she just thought he was the most remarkable man. His skills were so varied, you know, he could do anything.
Yeah,
You know, when he was in his early 20s, he wrote 60 plays one year. 60 plays.
Wow. I mean, that is impressive by anybody's standards.
He wrote Private Lives in 4 days.
That's kind of nauseating, isn't it? If you're a writer, it's unbelievable. Yeah. I was going to see whether anybody in the audience wanted to ask any questions, and then we'll come back to this conversation. Does anybody have anything that they'd like to ask? Just, yes, I'm sure all of you do. Is anything off limits?
No, nothing's off limits. Your mother, Lucy, my mother was a fabulous beauty called Margaret Viner, who was a big star of the catwalk, and she was a royal correspondent for Hartnell and things back in the 20s, and she married my father, having done a few movies in which she was quite good, and then she just started bringing us up and looking after us, and then she took to writing plays, like The Grass is Greener was their most famous play she wrote with my father, and she was a good mum. She gave up. In those days, quite a lot of women had to give up their careers, and she did.
She was Australian.
She was Australian, yeah. She was Australian. There was hardly any trace of her Australian accent, except when she'd had a bottle of wine, and then she'd maybe just say cricket, and cricket. It would be cricket. Cricket instead of cricket. She was lovely.
I think there's a lady at the back that's got a question.
Thank you. Hi. I create theatre with older adults, and I just wondered, in your own words, if you could describe the greatest benefits of live performance.
Is this a job offer?
Yes, it is, happily.
Hooray.
Lucy, nice to meet you. Yeah, it'd just be interesting to hear from your own point of view with such experience to describe the benefits of how it feels to perform and your mental well-being and the addiction of it.
I think for me, one of the joys of acting in the theatre, it's terrifying, of course, when you have a first night. But if you're doing a comedy and you get a reaction of a laugh, it just is wonderful. And if you've ever done a farce or anything like that, that just can blow the roof off. And you get such a high from that. And also with the sadder stuff, you know, more dramatic stuff, it's always different. Every night it's completely different. You know, different audiences, different actors, different, not, you know, acting differently, not different actors.
The process of acting, though, is something that is very beneficial too, because in order to visit and portray other characters, you have to actually look down and see who you are at the departure point, and see what you might have in common. You have to dig into your rag bag of experiences to find out how the character might feel or react.
Lucy, when you were talking about the nerves of the first night, I read something recently saying that they'd done a test on astronauts who are waiting in a rocket to be fired to the moon or whatever. Their pulse, their heart rate was the same as actors waiting in the wings to go on a first night.
I'm not surprised.
I mean, yeah.
Survival rate's about the same too.
Well, with any luck, you don't get blown up at the end of a play.
An adrenaline rush, and it's very difficult. I know from my husband, is the come down after a performance. You can't just go to bed. You're quite energized, and the adrenaline is pumping round.
You're most tired when you're driving or travelling to the theatre. When you're travelling back, you're going, wee, that was fun. And you,
yeah.
There was a very good actor called Peter Barkworth who wrote a wonderful book about acting, and he said, on the way to the theatre, you should target something you're going to do a bit less of on the way to the theatre and something you're going to do a little bit more of. So maybe you think, I'll just tighten in that emotion there and I'll just sell that a bit more. So you have to keep a performance fresh. You have to review it on the way home. The M4 is where I do I think, I wasn't very good in that bit tonight. I didn't get that. I wasn't clear. Or maybe...
But do you do what certainly my husband does, is the joy, the euphoria of being offered a job. You accept the job. You're very excited about the job. You then go through the agony of learning the lines, at which point, halfway through, my husband kind of go, I don't know why I accepted this job. It's an absolute nightmare. You know, I'm never going to learn the lines. It's, you know, far too short a rehearsal period. So-and-so's really tricky to work with. And then come the opening or come the first day of filming, all that's forgotten. Yeah.
I mean, we wouldn't be proper artists if we didn't feel miserable. The process is jolly tough.
Yeah.
It's jolly tough, learning it and then discovering it and finding the best way to reveal it to the audience without being too obvious.
But rehearsals are fun and interesting because you learn so much more about the play. And then, you know, you get to the dress rehearsal and the technical rehearsal. And then the first time you put particularly a new play in front of an audience, you learn a million times much more about the story, and that you go, oh, that's what that means. That's where they get that. That's how that works. And it's fascinating.
There's a question over there. Which part or character have we enjoyed most? Did you hear that?
Yeah.
It's a sort of question of when I'm not near the girl I love the girl I'm near. I like the part I'm playing at the moment always. I played Justin Elliott in The Archers. Anyone watch The Archers? Not quite enough of you, actually.
You can't watch The Archers.
No,
of course
to The Archers.
It was a trick question, Lucy.
Yeah. Everybody's listened to The Archers, just very elite few have watched it.
People are always doing something else when The Archer's on. They're feeding a baby or chopping the carrots and things. But I love that. I like the fact that you don't know where the character's going or what he's going to be doing next. As long as he stays alive, I don't really care.
I once played a maid in a farce called See How They Run, and it's so much sort of not my kind of part. I'm usually sort of boring wife or sort of neighbour or something.
That'd be a bit of a stretch for you, Luce.
So I was this Cockney maid saying things like, tea?
I got a bit.
And you don't know how to make tea. You've already said you don't know how to make tea. So, yeah, miscast on that line.
This was a job she wasn't intended to have, because I was in it and I wanted her to come because we were travelling overseas. And eventually Derek Nimmo said, all right, she can play the maid. And he was very reluctant. And she absolutely stole the show. And it said in the review in the Hong Kong news, whatever, Lucy Fleming steals the show.
Never said again.
Anyway.
Has anybody else got it? Yes. We may have to bring a microphone. Is there a microphone?
No, we can repeat the questions.
Well, you can hear them, which I'm impressed. There is a microphone. Brilliant.
In your early days, when you didn't have parts, what did you do in the in-between times as a job?
I was a market researcher. I used to have to go and ask people all kinds of questions. And I'll try and make this story brief, but I quickly found out about 30 questionnaires to fill out. I asked a couple of people all the questions, and I thought I can do this. And I made up the other 28. I gave them names, addresses. I made up their responses. I described where they lived and how they lived and what they liked. And I took them in and gave them over to my supervisor. And as I handed them in, she said, "Oh, this is Susan, who's the field checker." And I said, "Field checker? What do you mean?" And she said, "Well, she just takes several of your questionnaires and checks they've been properly done, properly." So I said, "Oh, right." I rushed to the bank to clear the check, and she called the next week and said, "Come in, I've got another survey for you." And I went in, and there was Susan sitting there, and I said, "Oh, hi, Susan, how are you?" I said, did you check mine? Yes, she said, they were all very good. So I thought, this is a pretty bent profession.
One thing I meant to ask you earlier is, did either of your parents, or did your parents encourage or discourage you from starting or following in their footsteps, doing the same profession? Lucy?
In my case, no, not at all. When I said to my mother I wanted to try and go to drama school, she was absolutely thrilled, but she never pushed me. And I think that's the right thing.
It's not too late.
I think they might turn me down now. They turned me down then.
What about you, Sam?
I said, I want to be an actor when I grow up. And my father said, you'll have to choose. You can't do both. But somehow acting does keep the child in you, I think. I think all actors are a little bit children with the fancy dress, with the dressing up box.
And interestingly, I think what's a big kind of misconception about actors is that they're very extrovert, which is why they do what they do. And a lot of the times it's the exact opposite, wouldn't you say?
I think everybody's an actor. Everybody who's ever told a lie is an actor. Even children, with chocolate all over their face, say, "No, I never touched the cake." They're all great. They can fake tears. They don't want to go to bed or school.
A lot of actors are shy. I mean,
Yeah, they are.
Paul Schofield was notoriously shy.
Alec Guinness was shy.
And I think because you can then be somebody else. You're not
It's a sort of protective cloak.
Yeah, you can be another person who isn't shy. You can be in a character that isn't the same as you.
I myself am a bashful person.
I was going to say that you might have been the exception to the rule. Have we got any other questions? Yeah.
Lady here.
How do you feel about drinks served in the theatre? Driving me mad.
Drinks in the theatre.
Oh, yes.
Well, let's talk about the price of going to the theatre. The tickets to see Plaza Suite at the Savoy with Sarah Jessica Parker were £350 a go. So if you've paid that much, I think you're probably entitled to take in a full-scale picnic. But it is annoying because it means they can't clap. And it means if they laugh, they're going to splatter a ham sandwich all over the person in front. So I'm with you. I like to have an audience sitting there with their eyes fixed on the stage and mouth closed.
I think if it's properly organised, it should be fine, but it obviously isn't in some of the shows that people have been to. It's just a nightmare.
And also, in the theatre, even I remember, which must have been strange, is people used to smoke like chimneys in the theatre.
Well, the great thing as an actor, an impoverished actor, you would always say, "Can I smoke a cigarette in this scene?" And they'd always say yes. And you'd be given a packet of cigarettes that you could rehearse with.
Free.
The strange thing was, as you lit up on stage, everyone in the audience would, you see
Copy you.
matches and lighters lighting up, and a great plume of blue smoke in the lights would come at you. We've lived through some strange old times, haven't we?
There's a lady here got a question. Are our children in the profession as well? Yes. Your son is a very good actor and director. He does things here actually a lot. Tam Williams. Simon's daughter Amy was an actress. Now she's a full-time mum. My eldest son is a sort of producer and is hoping to build some massive studios near Marlow, which is his project. And the others have been sensible.
I think we've got time for one more question before. Yeah.
Hi there. I was just wondering if you could touch a little bit about your ways and techniques of learning lines, and whether that might have changed whilst you've got older as well. I mean, obviously, I know about repetition, but just wondered if you had any other techniques and if that's changed over the years.
You go, you do.
I think everybody has their own way of learning lines. Repetition is one of the best ones. Sometimes putting half the script on a tape and playing it in a loop, but then you don't want to get stuck in that, in that way of delivering the line.
Having a very patient husband must help you there.
Yes, it would.
I think Lucy's just had the last word, Simon, but I think she has had the last word. I think we need to leave on that note, unless you want to add one.
Just to finish on the writing thing, good writing is always a pleasure to learn, but some of the writing we have to learn is just awful. And half your brain is saying, please rewrite this and use a better word or unsplit the infinitive and things. So good writing is heaven.
I'd just like to thank both Lucy and Simon for we could have gone on for ages hearing about wonderful stories, but I cannot thank you both enough for coming today and to talking at the Agenda Festival. And I hope wherever you're going next, not you two, but wherever you're going, enjoy it. It's a wonderful festival, and thank you all for coming very much.
You were terrific. Thanks.
Thank you so much.